First class isn't for everyone, the purser announces, loud enough for nearby rows to hear. This is airline policy, sir. The purser's fingers wrap around the metal cane. He yanks it from the elderly black man's grip without warning. Passengers gasp. Phone cameras rise like periscopes. Harold Wilson's weathered hands tremble slightly against the leather armrest. His military-issued cane, the one with his unit's insignia, disappears into the overhead bin with a hollow thud. I have a ticket for this seat, Wilson says, voice steady, despite the humiliation burning across his face. The purser doesn't even glance at the boarding pass again. We need to keep moving. Coach is that way. 3 rows back, a passenger in an understated suit watches with narrowing eyes. His jaw tightens imperceptibly. The purser tosses the veteran's military-issued cane into the overhead bin, smirking. Problem solved. He has no idea who's watching from 3 rows back. Harold Wilson sits ramrod straight, despite his 73 years. The silver star pin on his lapel catches the cabin light as the purser hovers over him. Wilson's fingers trace the edge of his boarding pass, a first-class ticket purchased by his daughter for his birthday trip to the Vietnam Veterans Reunion in Washington, D.C. This marks the 3rd airline employee who's questioned his presence in first class since he arrived at the gate. The first gate agent checked his ID twice. The second asked if he was in the right boarding group. Now the purser stands over him, doubt etched into every line of his face. Sir, these seats are reserved for our premium customers, the purser repeats, emphasizing premium with practiced condescension. Wilson reaches into his jacket pocket, retrieving his military ID card. I understand. I've flown first class before. 3 rows behind them, General Michael Thornton recognizes the quiet dignity in Wilson's posture immediately. He's seen it before, in the grainy footage from 1968, when Wilson, then a young Army Ranger, carried 3 wounded men through waist-deep jungle water under heavy fire. The operation that earned Wilson his Silver Star. The same operation where Wilson ultimately saved 12 men from certain death. Thornton notices Wilson's phone peeking from his shirt pocket, its recording light blinking silently. Smart move, old soldier. The purser barely glances at Wilson's military ID. That doesn't change airline policy about proper attire and conduct in first class. Wilson keeps his voice level. May I ask what policy I'm violating? The purser gestures vaguely at Wilson's modest but immaculate suit. Our first-class passengers have certain expectations. A flight attendant passing by catches the exchange, her eyes lingering momentarily on Wilson's Silver Star pin. General Thornton's jaw tightens. He reaches for the call button. Wilson's phone silently records everything, as it has been since boarding began. He learned long ago to document discrimination. Vietnam taught him to prepare for battle before the first shot. The purser, Scott Miller, according to his name tag, motions to a security officer standing near the cockpit door. The officer approaches with practiced neutrality, but his eyes flick nervously between Miller and Wilson. What seems to be the problem? Asks Security Officer James Reed, his voice professional but cautious. Miller points at Wilson. This gentleman seems confused about his seating assignment. We need to resolve this before departure. Wilson sits perfectly still, maintaining eye contact with Reed. There's no confusion. I have a valid first-class ticket for seat 3A. He extends his boarding pass again. This is the 3rd time I've been asked to verify my ticket since arriving at the gate. Reed studies the boarding pass. Miller interrupts before he can respond. Sir, we have concerns about whether you belong in this cabin section. Miller's emphasis on belong hangs in the air. These premium seats come with a significant price point. Wilson's expression remains neutral, but something flashes behind his eyes. Are you suggesting I can't afford this ticket? I'm simply doing my job, Miller replies, not answering the question directly. Our first-class passengers have certain expectations regarding their experience. Several nearby passengers shift uncomfortably in their seats. A woman across the aisle frowns, her fingers hovering over her phone screen. Wilson reaches into his inner jacket pocket again, retrieving both his military ID and driver's license. I'm a retired Army Ranger, heading to a veterans reunion in D.C. My daughter purchased this ticket as a birthday gift. Miller barely glances at the identification. Military status doesn't exempt anyone from airline protocols. Reed examines Wilson's ID more carefully. His eyebrows rise slightly at the veteran designation. I see no issue with the passenger's documentation, Reed states, handing the ID back to Wilson with more respect than Miller showed. Miller's jaw tightens. There's more to first-class requirements than just having a ticket. General Thornton watches the exchange intently. His fingers drum a military cadence against his armrest as he reaches for his phone. Wilson maintains his composure. I'd appreciate if you would clarify exactly which requirements I'm failing to meet. Miller gestures at Wilson's walking cane resting against the seat. For one, that cane could be considered a potential hazard in an emergency evacuation. This is a medical necessity, Wilson responds calmly. I sustained injuries during my service. It could still be used as a weapon, Miller persists, voice dropping slightly. In today's security climate, we have to be cautious. Wilson's eyebrows rise fractionally. A weapon? I've flown with this cane for 20 years without issue. Reed shifts his weight uncomfortably. His eyes dart between Wilson and the increasingly agitated purser. Perhaps we should consult with the captain, Reed suggests diplomatically. That won't be necessary, Miller cuts in. As purser, I have authority over cabin safety issues. Wilson takes a slow, measured breath. I'm meeting military colleagues in D.C. General Hayes specifically asked me to join this panel about Vietnam reconnaissance operations. Miller's hand moves toward Wilson's cane. Sir, we consider this a potential weapon. I'll need to store it for the duration of the flight. The security officer glances at his supervisor, doubt crossing his face. His hand moves instinctively to touch something under his jacket, a veteran's pin of his own, hidden from view. Passengers in nearby seats watch with increasing discomfort. A businessman diagonally across from Wilson opens his laptop, typing rapidly. An elderly woman shakes her head in disapproval. General Thornton continues observing, his military training evident in his stillness. Only his eyes move, cataloging details, assessing the situation with tactical precision. Wilson rests his hands on his knees, back straight despite obvious discomfort. That cane is necessary for my mobility. You can request wheelchair assistance at our destination, Miller says dismissively. For now, I need to secure this item. Wilson looks directly at Reed. Officer, is this standard procedure to confiscate medical devices from disabled veterans? Reed hesitates, professionalism warring with personal discomfort. Sir, That's enough, Miller interrupts. We need to resolve this situation quickly. We're delaying departure. The air thickens with tension. Overhead lights highlight sweat beading on Miller's forehead. Wilson's silver star pin gleams against his dark suit as he takes another measured breath. I respectfully request you call your supervisor, Wilson says, each word precisely chosen. I believe there's been a misunderstanding of both airline policy and federal law regarding disabled passengers. Miller's face flushes. There's no misunderstanding. I've been working this route for 15 years. Wilson nods once. Then you should be familiar with the Air Carrier Access Act. The security officer's eyebrows rise slightly. He steps back half a pace, reassessing the situation. General Thornton leans forward slightly in his seat. His phone screen illuminates with a text message from a military contact. He types a rapid response. Miller reaches for Wilson's cane. For everyone's safety, I need to secure this now. Miller's fingers close around Wilson's cane. He pulls it away with unnecessary force, the metal scraping against the armrest. Wilson instinctively reaches forward but stops himself, dignity overriding instinct. "Please return my cane," Wilson says, his voice steady but tighter now. "I cannot walk safely without it." Miller ignores the request, sliding the cane into the overhead compartment and closing it with a definitive click. "You can retrieve it after we land." Wilson grips his armrests, pain flickering across his weathered features. "That cane is necessary for my mobility. It's also a military-issued memento with significant personal value." "Sir, if you continue disrupting boarding, we'll need to evaluate whether you can remain on this flight," Miller warns, gesturing to Reed. The cabin intercom crackles to life. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We're experiencing a slight security delay. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. We should be underway shortly." Miller leans closer to Wilson, lowering his voice. "Now, for everyone's comfort, I think it would be best if you moved to a seat in the main cabin." Wilson's face remains composed, but his knuckles whiten against the armrest. "I have a valid ticket for this seat. Nevertheless," Miller continues, "we have the authority to reassign seating for the comfort and safety of all passengers." More phones rise throughout the cabin, silent witnesses capturing every word, every gesture. The digital evidence multiplies by the second. "Stand up, please," Miller instructs, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. Wilson struggles to stand without his cane, pain shooting through his left leg, the same leg that took shrapnel while saving his platoon. He braces himself against the seat, refusing Miller's insincere offer of assistance. "Article 93, Wilson whispers, almost inaudibly. Only those closest to him, including General Thornton, catch the reference to the military code regarding cruelty and maltreatment. Reed steps forward hesitantly. "Sir, do you require medical assistance?" "I require my cane," Wilson answers simply. Miller gestures toward the back of the plane. "This way, please." Wilson takes one painful step, then another. His left leg nearly buckles. A young woman half rises from her seat, concern etched across her face, but Miller waves her back down. "Airline personnel will handle this situation," Miller announces to the increasingly restless cabin. Wilson steadies himself against each seat as he's forced to shuffle backward through first class. His silver star pin catches the light with each labored movement. The dignified veteran becomes a spectacle exactly what Miller seems to want. The videos are already uploading to social media, invisible digital missiles launching into the world. A teenager whispers to her mother, pointing at her phone screen where the incident streams live. General Thornton remains seated, but his posture changes subtly. Military observers would recognize the shift from watchful to operational. He sends another text, this one longer, more detailed. Reed follows behind Wilson, discomfort evident in his stance. His eyes keep returning to the closed overhead bin containing the confiscated cane. Wilson pauses halfway down the aisle, pain visibly shooting through his injured leg. "I need to rest a moment." "We need to keep moving," Miller insists, placing a hand on Wilson's shoulder to propel him forward. Wilson doesn't resist physically, but his voice cuts through the cabin. "I am Harold Wilson, retired Army Ranger. I respectfully request the captain's intervention in this situation." Miller scoffs. The captain has more important concerns than seating arrangements. A flight attendant approaches from the galley, her name tag reading Lisa Chen. She watches the scene unfold with increasing concern, her eyes lingering on Wilson's silver star pin. "Mr. Miller," she begins cautiously, "perhaps I could—" "Return to your station," Miller interrupts. "I'm handling this situation." Wilson takes another painful step, his breathing now labored from exertion and suppressed pain. Passengers watch in uncomfortable silence as the elderly veteran is marched toward the back of the plane like a trespasser. Pain etches deeper lines on Wilson's face with each step. Phone cameras glint like distant stars throughout the cabin, documenting his humiliation from multiple angles. Lisa Carter returns to the galley, but her eyes follow Wilson's painful progress down the aisle. She slips her crew tablet from its storage compartment, fingers moving quickly across the screen. "Silver Star," she whispers, typing the words into the search bar. Her eyes widen as results populate the screen. The Silver Star Medal, the United States' third highest military decoration for valor in combat, awarded for gallantry in action against enemies of the United States. Chen glances up, watching Wilson struggle without his cane. Her father had served in the Marines. She recognizes the controlled pain in Wilson's movements, the discipline that keeps him from complaining despite obvious discomfort. In the main cabin, Miller directs Wilson to a middle seat in row 27. This should be suitable. Wilson stands beside the row, looking at the narrow middle seat wedged between two occupied aisle and window positions. "This accommodation doesn't allow for my medical needs." "It's what's available," Miller responds dismissively. "We need to complete boarding." The passengers in row 27 exchange uncomfortable glances. The man in the aisle seat stands without being asked. "Sir, please take my seat. You shouldn't be in the middle with your leg." Miller frowns. "That's not necessary. We've made our seating determination." "I insist," the passenger says firmly, stepping into the aisle. Other passengers murmur in approval. Chen approaches Reed, who remains stationed halfway down the aisle, watching the situation unfold. She tilts her tablet screen toward him discreetly. "Did you see this?" she asks quietly. Reed glances at the screen showing information about the Silver Star Medal and its significance. His eyes widen slightly. "And look at this," Carter continues, swiping to another screen. She's pulled up passenger information for seat 3A Harold Wilson. The airline system tags him as a frequent flyer with military veteran status. "There's more," she says, voice barely above a whisper. She taps another icon, revealing Wilson's previous flight history, all without incident. Multiple first-class trips, 0 complaints. Reed's professional demeanor cracks slightly. "This isn't right." "The pin on his lapel," Carter adds. "That's the actual medal. My father always said you don't wear those lightly." Reed nods imperceptibly. He touches his own veteran's pin hidden under his jacket lapel. "We should report this to the captain." Meanwhile, Wilson finally settles into the aisle seat, thanking the passenger who voluntarily gave up his place. The man nods respectfully. "Thank you for your service, sir." Miller remains standing over them, irritation evident in his posture. "Now that this is resolved, we can proceed with departure." "This isn't resolved," Wilson states calmly. "I still require my cane, and I paid for a first-class seat." Miller's jaw tightens. "Your concerns have been noted. Now please prepare for departure." In the cockpit, the captain reviews messages coming in from airline headquarters. His brow furrows as he scrolls through alerts about a developing situation on social media involving his flight. Chen shows Reed the tablet. His eyes widen as he reads about the Silver Star's significance and the extraordinary actions required to earn one. The screen shows historical information about Vietnam-era recipients men who charged enemy positions, saved fellow soldiers under fire, held off attackers while wounded. "The purser took his cane," Reed says quietly. "A mobility device from a decorated veteran." Chen nods, her expression troubled. Someone with a Silver Star doesn't deserve this treatment. Reed glances toward the cockpit door. The captain should know about this. Miller returns to the forward cabin, straightening his uniform with practiced precision. He addresses the first-class passengers with a practiced smile. "We apologize for the delay. We'll be departing shortly." Several passengers avoid eye contact. Others stare openly, disapproval evident. The atmosphere has shifted palpably. General Thornton observes Miller's return, his military-trained eyes missing nothing. He sends another text message, this one containing flight details and Miller's full name. Chen approaches Miller at the forward galley. "Mr. Miller, I believe there's been a misunderstanding regarding Mr. Wilson." Miller's smile disappears. The situation has been handled. Return to your duties. Sir, Mr. Wilson is a decorated combat veteran. His silver star indicates... I don't care if he has a constellation on his jacket, Miller interrupts. He was disruptive and has been reseated. End of discussion. Reed appears behind Chen, his security uniform lending weight to his presence. Mr. Miller, with respect, I believe we should review this situation. The passenger's documentation was in order. Miller turns to Reed, surprise flickering across his features. Officer Reed, need I remind you that cabin safety is my jurisdiction? And security protocols are mine, Reed responds evenly. I'm not convinced Mr. Wilson presented any legitimate security concern. Whispered conversations behind cupped hands spread throughout the cabin. The tablet screen illuminates concerned faces as Carter and Reed continue their quiet challenge to Miller's authority. In the back of the plane, Wilson sits perfectly still, conserving energy. His phone continues recording from his pocket. His expression reveals nothing, but his eyes track every movement at the front of the aircraft. The captain emerges from the cockpit, scanning the cabin. He spots Carter and Reed in conversation with Miller and approaches with purposeful strides. What's the situation? He asks, his voice low but commanding. Miller straightens immediately. Minor seating issue, Captain. Already resolved. Chen hesitates, then steps forward. Captain, a passenger was removed from first class and had his mobility device confiscated. The captain's eyebrows rise. On what grounds? Miller begins a practiced explanation, but Reed interrupts respectfully. Sir, the passenger is Harold Wilson, seat 3A, decorated veteran with valid first-class ticket and necessary medical device. I observed no security concerns warranting his removal. The captain's expression darkens. Where is this passenger now? Row 27, Carter answers promptly. The captain nods once. I'll address this personally. In the meantime, no announcements about departure until I return. As the captain moves toward the back of the aircraft, Miller's confident demeanor wavers for the first time. Carter shows Reed more information on her tablet, including Wilson's distinguished military history now appearing in search results linked to the flight number. Reed touches his own veteran's pin hidden under his jacket. The first crack in the united front against Wilson has widened into a visible rift. General Thornton observes the captain's purposeful stride toward the back of the aircraft. His military-trained eyes miss nothing. The captain's squared shoulders, the subtle tells of concern breaking through professional composure. Thornton's phone vibrates with an incoming message. The sender, Pentagon Office of Veterans Affairs. He reads quickly, then taps out a response. Identity confirmed. Silver Star recipient Wilson. Harold J. Operation Crimson Jungle, 1968. Proceeding with intervention. 3 rows ahead, a young boy leans across the aisle toward Wilson's now empty seat. Mommy, where did the soldier man go? His mother hesitates. He had to move, honey. But his special pin was shiny. He looked important. The mother glances nervously toward Miller, then whispers, Yes, I think he is important. In row 27, Wilson gently extracts a worn photograph from his wallet. The passenger beside him glimpses men in jungle fatigues, arms around each other's shoulders. Mud-spattered faces grin despite obvious exhaustion. Vietnam? The passenger asks quietly. Wilson nods once. Long time ago. My father served. Never talked about it. Wilson's weathered fingers trace the faces in the photo. Some things are hard to put into words. The captain reaches Wilson's row, kneeling to eye level despite the confined space. Their conversation remains private, but Wilson's dignified nod communicates volumes. Near the front of the plane, Miller's phone chimes with a notification. The airline's social media team has flagged an urgent situation. Videos tagged #VeteranRespect and #AtlanticAirDisgrace are trending rapidly across platforms. One clip shows Wilson's painful walk without his cane. Another captures Miller's dismissive handling of the military ID. A third records the confiscation of the cane with Miller's potential weapon comment clearly audible. Miller's expression tightens as he scrolls through the notifications. The digital tsunami has already begun. In the galley, Carter receives a message on her crew tablet. The chief flight attendant requests immediate information about the Wilson situation. Corporate headquarters is calling. Reed positions himself near the overhead bin containing Wilson's confiscated cane. His posture has shifted subtly, no longer backing Miller's authority, but instead guarding the veteran's property. Throughout the cabin, passengers exchange glances and whispered comments. Phone screens light up across the cabin as the incident spreads across social media platforms. The hashtags multiply. Hashtag respect our veterans. Hashtag Silver Star treatment. Atlantic Air. Shame. The captain returns to the forward cabin, his face now set in grim determination. He gestures for Miller to join him near the cockpit door. Chen approaches Reed, showing him her tablet. HQ is calling in. This is escalating fast. Reed nods, watching Miller's increasingly defensive body language as the captain speaks. Good, this needs addressing. General Thornton ends his call with 2 words. It's confirmed. He rises from his seat with the fluid precision of a military officer, despite his civilian attire. The CEO's assistant interrupts his meeting with an airline operations report. Sir, we have a situation on Flight 2187. It's going viral. Phone screens light up across the cabin. Silent nods exchange between knowing passengers. The invisible network of digital witnesses grows by the second. The captain guides Miller into the small staff area near the cockpit. His voice remains low, but carries unmistakable authority. Explain exactly what happened with passenger Wilson. Miller straightens his posture defensively. He was creating a disruption during boarding. I made a judgment call regarding cabin safety. What specific disruption? The captain presses. He became argumentative when asked about his seating assignment. The captain's eyes narrow. According to the manifest, he has a valid first-class ticket. Why question his assignment at all? Miller hesitates. He didn't seem typical of our first-class demographic. The captain's expression hardens. Define typical, Mr. Miller. Before Miller can respond, General Thornton approaches. He stands with the natural authority of someone accustomed to command, though he wears no uniform to mark his rank. Captain, Thornton begins, extending his hand. Michael Thornton, United States Army. I witnessed the incident with Mr. Wilson and would like to provide my perspective. The captain shakes his hand. Thank you, sir. I'm gathering information about the situation. Thornton's voice carries quiet precision. Harold Wilson isn't just any passenger. He's a decorated combat veteran who saved 12 men during one of the most brutal operations in Vietnam. I recognized him immediately. Miller interjects, military status doesn't exempt anyone from airline protocols. No, Thornton agrees coldly, but federal law protects disabled passengers from discrimination and requires accommodation for medical devices like Mr. Wilson's cane. The captain turns to Miller. You confiscated a mobility device from a disabled passenger? It could potentially be used as a weapon, Miller defends. Thornton's eyebrows rise. A 73-year-old man with a documented disability poses a security threat? That's your assessment? In the main cabin, Carter approaches Wilson with a glass of water. Mr. Wilson, I want to personally apologize for what happened. This isn't how our airline treats any passenger, especially not someone with your service record. Wilson accepts the water with quiet dignity. Thank you. I appreciate your kindness. The captain is addressing the situation now, Carter assures him. Your cane will be returned immediately. Reed stands nearby, observing the exchange. His security training keeps his expression neutral, but his positioning protective rather than confrontational reveals his changed perspective. Back in the forward cabin, the captain's phone rings. He answers briefly, his expression growing increasingly serious. After disconnecting, he turns to Miller. That was operations. Corporate headquarters is receiving calls about this incident. It's already on social media. Miller pales slightly. It's being blown out of proportion. Is it? The captain challenges. He pulls up the passenger manifest on his tablet. Harold Wilson, Silver Star recipient, 30 years of military service, noted disability accommodation for combat injuries, frequent flyer with our airline for 15 years without a single incident report. Thornton watches the exchange with the calculated patience of a seasoned officer. His presence alone adds weight to the unfolding investigation. The cockpit door opens with ominous precision. The first officer emerges with a satellite phone in hand. Captain, call from headquarters. The CEO wants to speak with you directly. Miller's confident demeanor crumbles visibly. The captain takes the phone, listening intently while maintaining eye contact with Miller. Throughout the cabin, hushed, urgent conversations fill the air. Passengers lean across aisles, sharing video clips and social media updates about the incident unfolding on their very flight. In row 27, Wilson sits with perfect military posture despite his discomfort. The physical pain pales compared to the dignity stripped from him, a humiliation all too familiar across his 7 decades of life. The captain concludes his call and returns his attention to the situation at hand. His decision is evident in his stance before he speaks a word. Mr. Wilson will return to his assigned first-class seat immediately. His mobility device will be returned with an appropriate apology. Miller begins to protest, but the captain cuts him off with a raised hand. Furthermore, Mr. Miller, you'll remain in the galley for the remainder of the flight. Ms. Carter will take over your cabin duties. The general stands. Captain, this plane isn't moving until justice is served. The captain nods in agreement. Mr. Wilson deserves a formal apology and appropriate compensation for this incident. The purser's face drains of color as the captain holds out the phone. It's the CEO. He wants to speak with you directly. Miller takes the phone with visibly trembling fingers, his earlier confidence entirely evaporated. Reed retrieves Wilson's cane from the overhead compartment. He handles it with careful respect, noting the military insignia engraved on the handle. The worn metal tells its own story of years of service, both in combat and in supporting the veteran afterward. He approaches Wilson in row 27, extending the cane with both hands in a gesture that carries unspoken apology. Mr. Wilson, your cane, sir. Wilson accepts it with dignity. Thank you, Officer Reed. I apologize for the confusion earlier, Reed says, choosing his words carefully. It was a misunderstanding that should never have happened. Chen arrives with the captain. Mr. Wilson, we'd like to escort you back to your proper seat in first class. The passengers in row 27 offer supportive nods as Wilson rises, now steady with his cane restored. The man who gave up his aisle seat stands. It was an honor to meet you, sir. Wilson's measured steps back toward first class draw respectful gazes. The captain walks beside him, deliberately matching the veteran's pace. The intercom system crackles to life. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We apologize for the delay. We're addressing a customer service matter that requires a few more minutes of your patience. We'll be on our way shortly. In the forward galley, Miller concludes his call with the CEO, his expression ashen. The conversation clearly delivered consequences rather than support. Wilson settles back into his first-class seat. Carter immediately brings a glass of water and a warm towel. Can I get you anything else, Mr. Wilson? This is sufficient, thank you, he responds with characteristic restraint. Other first-class passengers offer quiet nods of support. The woman across the aisle leans over. What happened to you was disgraceful. I'm glad they're making it right. Wilson accepts the comment with a slight nod. His focus remains on the larger principles at stake rather than personal vindication. Reed stands at a respectful distance, his posture communicating protective vigilance rather than suspicion. The purser straightens his tie, confident he can explain everything to the captain. A simple misunderstanding blown out of proportion. Nothing that can't be smoothed over with the right words. Wilson accepts the apology with grace, but General Thornton's not finished. His military bearing communicates that this temporary resolution merely sets the stage for proper accountability. Kane returned with reverent hands. Hushed anticipation settles over the cabin. The first battle is won, but war veterans know better than most initial victories don't end conflicts. General Thornton rises from his seat. The casual observer might see just another business traveler in a well-tailored suit, but military personnel would instantly recognize the unmistakable bearing of high command. He approaches Wilson's seat, extending his hand. Master Sergeant Wilson, General Michael Thornton, Joint Chiefs of Staff Advisory Committee. It's an honor to meet you, sir. A ripple of murmurs passes through the cabin. Passengers exchange surprised glances. Wilson grasps the general's hand firmly. Recognition flashes in his eyes. General Thornton, I wasn't aware you were on this flight. I noticed you during boarding, Thornton replies. I recognized you from the Silver Star ceremony footage. Operation Crimson Jungle remains a textbook example of exceptional valor under fire. The captain stands nearby, his expression shifting as he recognizes the military significance unfolding in his cabin. General, I apologize for interrupting. Is there something we should know? Thornton turns to address him directly. Captain, what happened here today goes beyond a simple customer service issue. This is about fundamental respect for one of our nation's heroes. The captain nods gravely. We're addressing the situation, sir. With all due respect, I don't believe you understand the full context. Thornton's voice carries the quiet authority of someone accustomed to commanding rooms far more imposing than an aircraft cabin. Master Sergeant Wilson isn't just any veteran. He turns to address the entire first-class cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe some transparency is warranted here. With your permission, Harold? Wilson gives a single, dignified nod. Thornton continues. The gentleman who was removed from this cabin holds the Silver Star for gallantry in action. During Operation Crimson Jungle in 1968, then Sergeant Wilson led a reconnaissance team that became separated from their main unit during a firefight. The cabin screens normally showing flight maps suddenly switched to a historical military photograph. Wilson, 5 decades younger, stands at attention as a commanding officer pins the Silver Star to his uniform. Chen gasps softly. The screens. Reed glances toward the cockpit. Headquarters override? Thornton acknowledges the image with a nod. When their position was overrun, Sergeant Wilson, despite sustaining shrapnel wounds to his leg and side, carried 3 wounded men through hostile territory to safety. He then returned alone to recover the team's radio operator. Over the next 14 hours, he coordinated an extraction while defending their position against repeated enemy attacks. The screens change again, displaying Wilson's military record. 30 years of exemplary service, multiple commendations, training citations, leadership awards. Miller emerges from the galley, his face draining of color as he witnesses the unfolding scene. His eyes dart nervously between the displays, the general, and the passengers recording every moment. Thornton's voice remains measured but carries throughout the now silent cabin. Master Sergeant Wilson ultimately saved 12 American lives that day. Men who returned home to their families because of his courage and sacrifice. The screens shift again, showing social media posts already trending about the incident. Comments flood in from military members, veterans groups, and outraged citizens. The hashtags multiply by the second. Respect, our veterans, justice for Wilson, Atlantic Air disgrace. The injury that necessitates Master Sergeant Wilson's cane, the very mobility device that was confiscated today, is a direct result of his heroism under fire. A passenger stands from the opposite side of first class. I recorded the whole incident. He holds up his phone, including when Mr. Miller said the cane could be used as a weapon. Another passenger chimes in. I have the audio where he questioned whether Mr. Wilson could afford to be in first class. The digital evidence materializes from throughout the cabin multiple angles, clear audio, damning context. The invisible testimony of dozens of witnesses now made visible through technology. The captain's phone rings again. He answers, listening intently before addressing the cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, I've just spoken with our CEO. In light of this situation, there will be changes to our flight crew before departure. Miller steps forward. Captain, if I could explain— That won't be necessary, Mr. Miller, the captain interrupts firmly. You're being removed from this flight. A replacement purser is already on the way to the aircraft. Miller's professional facade crumbles entirely. This is completely disproportionate. I was following protocol for suspicious items. A decorated combat veteran's medically necessary mobility device is not a suspicious item, Thornton interjects, his tone glacial. And protocol never justifies discrimination. The screens change again, displaying the airline's own policy regarding accommodations for passengers with disabilities. The relevant sections are highlighted in red, making the violations unmistakable. Miller steps back as if physically struck, the full weight of the situation finally registering. The captain addresses the cabin again. Ladies and gentlemen, we sincerely apologize for this incident and the delay it has caused. Atlantic Airlines is committed to treating all passengers with dignity and respect. What happened today falls far short of our standards. The cabin intercom activates with a distinctive chime that indicates a direct broadcast from airline headquarters, a rare occurrence. This is Charles Bennett, CEO of Atlantic Airlines, comes the voice through the speakers. I'm speaking directly to everyone aboard Flight 22187. First, to Master Sergeant Harold Wilson, on behalf of everyone at Atlantic Airlines, I offer our deepest and most sincere apology for the inexcusable treatment you received today. Wilson acknowledges the apology with characteristic dignity, a slight nod that communicates both acceptance and the weight of what transpired. The CEO continues. To all passengers, we apologize for the delay. A new purser is boarding the aircraft now, and you'll be on your way shortly. Atlantic Airlines has a proud history of supporting our military personnel. The actions today of one employee do not reflect our values or policies. Miller stands frozen in the galley, his career visibly collapsing around him in real time. The CEO's voice becomes more resolute. Effective immediately, we are placing Mr. Miller on administrative leave pending a full investigation. Additionally, we are launching a comprehensive review of our training procedures regarding accommodations for disabled passengers and proper treatment of military veterans. General Thornton returns to his seat with military precision, mission accomplished. The screens return to their normal flight information display, but the cabin remains charged with the aftershocks of what just transpired. Reed approaches Wilson. Sir, I want to personally apologize for my part in this situation. I should have intervened sooner. Wilson meets his eyes directly. You followed your conscience when it mattered, son. That's what counts in the end. A replacement purser boards the aircraft, quickly briefed by the captain near the entrance. The new crew member approaches Wilson immediately. Master Sergeant Wilson, I'm Thomas Brooks, taking over as purser for this flight. It's an honor to serve you today. Please let me know if there's anything you need during our journey. Wilson acknowledges him with quiet dignity. Thank you, Mr. Brooks. I appreciate your professionalism. Throughout the cabin, passengers absorb the extraordinary sequence of events they've just witnessed. Justice delivered with precision and irrefutable evidence. The power of truth revealed layer by layer until denial became impossible. The new purser addresses the cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be departing shortly. On behalf of Atlantic Airlines, we again apologize for the delay. To express our appreciation for your patience, complimentary premium beverages will be available for all passengers during this flight. Miller is escorted from the aircraft by airport personnel, his posture defeated. The videos continue to spread across social media platforms, a digital tidal wave of accountability washing away pretense and prejudice. The screens illuminate with heroic imagery. Cabin erupts in applause as Wilson's dignity is not just restored, but elevated. The truth, finally given its proper platform, speaks with undeniable authority. The aircraft finally pushes back from the gate. Wilson sits comfortably in his first-class seat, his cane secured but accessible beside him. The cabin atmosphere has transformed from tension to a shared sense of witnessing justice served. Captain's voice comes through the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're cleared for departure. Our flight time to Washington, D.C. will be approximately 2 hours and 15 minutes. We appreciate your extraordinary patience today." As the plane climbs to cruising altitude, General Thornton moves to the empty seat beside Wilson. "May I join you for a moment, Master Sergeant?" Wilson gestures welcomingly. "Of course, General." "That was quite a situation," Thornton observes. "You handled it with remarkable composure." Wilson's weathered fingers trace the outline of his silver star pin. "I've faced worse confrontations with higher stakes." "True enough," Thornton acknowledges. "Still, it shouldn't have happened." Wilson's eyes reflect decades of similar experiences. But it did happen, and importantly, it was corrected. That's progress in itself. The new purser approaches with 2 glasses of water. "Gentlemen, can I bring you anything else?" "This is fine, thank you," Wilson responds. After the purser departs, Thornton speaks quietly. "I received a message from Atlantic Airlines' corporate office. They're implementing immediate changes to their training protocols. Your experience today is already creating ripples." Wilson nods thoughtfully. "Good. Systemic change matters more than individual consequences." "Speaking of consequences," Thornton continues, "the CEO has requested your permission to use this incident anonymized if you prefer in their new diversity training program." A hint of satisfaction crosses Wilson's face. "Permission granted. Use my name. Use the video. Sometimes people need to see reality plainly to understand it." Chen approaches with a tablet. "Mr. Wilson, I have a message for you from our headquarters." Wilson reviews the message, a formal apology and invitation to participate in Atlantic Airlines' upcoming Corporate Leadership Summit on inclusive customer service. Additionally, the airline is making a substantial donation to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund in his honor. They're also implementing a new training module specifically addressing respect for military personnel and proper accommodation of disabled passengers, Carter adds. It will be required for all customer-facing staff. Wilson hands the tablet back with a nod of approval. Appropriate measures. Across the cabin, a notification appears on every passenger's seatback screen. "Atlantic Airlines thanks you for your patience today. As a token of appreciation, we've credited your accounts with 25,000 bonus miles." Reed, still on board to complete the flight's security protocol, stops briefly beside Wilson's seat. "Sir, I've submitted my official incident report. It includes my personal observations regarding the improper handling of your mobility device and seating assignment." "Thank you, Officer Reed," Wilson responds. "Your integrity is noted and appreciated." As the flight progresses, the CEO's promised changes begin materializing in real time. An email goes out to all Atlantic Airlines staff worldwide, immediate procedural update regarding passenger accommodations and anti-discrimination protocols. The incident report, carefully documented with passenger videos and first-hand accounts, becomes the foundation for a comprehensive review of the airline's training practices. Miller's actions, now preserved in multiple digital formats, transform from an individual failing into an institutional learning opportunity. Near the end of the flight, Thornton and Wilson share stories of their military experiences. 2 generations of service connected by common values despite different wars. "Operation Crimson Jungle," Thornton remarks. "They still teach that mission at West Point, you know. Example of exceptional leadership under adverse conditions." Wilson smiles slightly. "We did what needed doing. Nothing more." "That's always been the difference," Thornton observes. "The best soldiers never see their own heroism. They just see necessary actions. The new purser approaches again. Gentlemen, we're beginning our initial descent into Washington. Can I get you anything before landing? After he departs, Wilson taps his cane gently against the floor. This isn't about one man or one flight. It's about recognizing humanity first, before assumptions and prejudices take hold. Thornton nods in agreement. The military taught me that character reveals itself under pressure. You demonstrated yours today. So did others, for better or worse. As the aircraft prepares for landing, Wilson notices several passengers on their phones, still engaged with the story that unfolded before them. The digital witnesses have become digital advocates, spreading not just outrage, but calls for concrete change. The captain makes a final announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, we're making our final approach into Reagan National Airport. On behalf of Atlantic Airlines, I want to personally thank you for your understanding today. To our military personnel and veterans on board, including our distinguished passenger Master Sergeant Wilson, we offer our deepest respect and gratitude for your service. The plane touches down smoothly. As passengers prepare to depart, many stop briefly at Wilson's seat to offer words of support or simple nods of respect. The general raises his water glass. To long overdue change. Wilson touches his glass to Thornton's. And to those who stand up when it matters. As Wilson deplanes, the entire crew lines up to offer personal apologies and thanks. The new purser hands him an envelope, a formal letter from the airline's CEO detailing the comprehensive changes being implemented following the incident. Wilson steps onto the jetway, cane firmly in hand, dignity fully restored. His phone buzzes with a message from his daughter. Dad, you're trending on social media. What happened? He smiles slightly. Some stories are better told in person. In the terminal, representatives from the airline wait to escort him to the VIP lounge where his fellow veterans have gathered. His humiliation has transformed into a powerful testimony, one that will reshape policies and perceptions beyond a single flight or company. Shoulders squared with restored dignity, sunrise glows through windows as Wilson joins his waiting colleagues. The silver star on his lapel catches the light, a small emblem representing immense courage, both past and present. Honor the untold stories. Witness the triumphs over injustice. Join us in preserving the powerful legacy of courage that shaped America. Black Legacy brings you compelling narratives that history books often overlook. Stories of extraordinary individuals who faced discrimination with dignity and changed the world through their resilience. Subscribe now and hit the notification bell to never miss our weekly voice documentaries. Each story illuminates another chapter in the ongoing journey toward true equality. Like our videos to help these important stories reach more viewers. Share them to ensure these legacies continue inspiring generations to come.